Welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Osborn. And on this podcast, we interview successful business owners for them to share atomic, impactful lessons that they've learned throughout the course of their business and share them with us so we can learn as well. As always, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everybody hates. We use this method to book 26 qualified leads and sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, or endless social media posting. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn, and the link to that will be in the show notes below. But on today's show, our special guest is Nick Savage. I just said to him earlier, one of the best names I've ever heard in my entire life, but he is the owner of Savage Flight, where he provides high performance leadership development services and products for those in sports and military ecosystem through every stage of life with a focus on precision learning, training, and wellness, leveraging technologies, the arts, and science to succeed. So, Nick, man, thank you for being on the show. And I want to start off by
Hey,
asking
Jason.
you, start off by asking you the first question I always love asking, which is this: if you were somehow to be able to have a time machine to go back in time when you started your very first business, what's the number one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
Oh, great question, Jason. I would say the biggest thing I learned spiraling, getting in this Back to the Future model you said, I
Yeah.
would say one of the key things that I found my mentors had told me at first, I guess back then was Nick, people, concept, and money. And you start putting in on these business plans and you're writing all this information and you're, processing on how to get funded. So the biggest thing out of those three I focused on when I was younger was the money, and said, okay, then go find. So if you find the money, then you can go get the people and then you can execute on the process or concept that you're trying. What I
Mm,
learned 20 years, 25 years later was it's out of people, concept, and money, find the tribe. Find the people first because the people, great teams make great things happen.
mm,
You can have the money available, but if that tribe is not the right tribe, they understand the vision, a shared vision. I'll say that again, a shared vision, because you don't
mhm.
really motivate people, you tap into their motivations. So I would say that was the biggest thing I learned. So I started shifting and start trying to find people, not necessarily to say yes to you for everything. They say no,
Mm, yeah.
but they also have a clear understanding on the mission that you're trying to execute. And that's
Mm,
one thing I also learned from as I moved into dealing with military, and where everything's mission driven. So you don't take things personal.
mm.
You focus on getting those requirements
Yeah.
and move out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things that you said there, I think is really important is that, yeah, having a shared vision, people, buying into that. But you also said, I can't remember the exact word or phrase that you said, but it's about understanding what they are in this for as well. You
What's their
know,
motivation? What's their
what's
why?
their what's their why?
Good
And I
old
think
Simon Sinek, right?
yeah, exactly. But dive into that a little bit more because I love this concept and I it took me a long time to figure it out as well because I thought, well, if someone's coming to work for me, well, then they need to get onto my why, which there is a balance in that, as you said, a shared mission and vision and stuff. But what's their why? Why are they there? So explain to me what you've learned on that and why it makes such an impact to the team.
Well, it gets back to that brain again, right? So left brain, right brain, right? Good old left brain, transactional, right brain, transformational. And it doesn't mean you need both. And I learned that in the world of development. There's no way you can develop things if you don't have left and right. So, when people say, okay, this person is specifically, right brain. Now, that's very
Yeah,
rare. But you do need to understand how they hear things, how they listen to things, and what their
yeah,
learning style is. And if, for example, you have a person that their why is, I just want to make money. that's a different attitude on if you're working on something that's requires transformation, early
Mm,
wins, that may not, you're going to have to project out. So if you're working with a company or you're working to help on a team to build a company to take it public, and you're, working around the clock for 2 straight years, it's not very, transactional at that point, as we both know, right? I mean,
yeah.
the bosses are saying, hey, when you're not in charge, like, hey, this stock, is going to be worth something someday. So that requires belief system that's really, transformational. It's not transactional. So you
Mm,
got to find that good mix of transactional people. Transactional people, left brain people are usually great to say no. So you get a team that you've got some no folks on there, and you say, okay, I understand that person. They're more transactional and transformational. They're not trying to go with blue sky ideas. They want to make things move
yeah.
now. So in
Yeah.
order to do that, that's how you have to create. I focus on 3 C's: culture, compliance, and compelling. Usually the right is going to give compelling stories, right? Messaging. Stories are very important now, right?
Yeah.
And a good left right brain mix, a person on the team is going to say, hey, did you ever think of this? Be the devil's advocate, say, no, here's what's going to make it fail. And in a lot of cases, you need the left right brain folks to say, do you have a succession plan? Because if you really don't
Mm,
know what you're going to do, failure's easy. I mean, you just
yeah.
say it didn't work.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you have a great team to build that culture, and once you build that culture, all parties, especially left, say, hey, is this compliant? Right? Especially
Yeah.
like right now with AI, for example, we got to circle back and figure out things like, well, where's the compliance that's going to identify a signature
Mm,
that's going to say, that's not real and this is
yeah.
real? That's where the money is. So it's
Yeah.
usually my mentors were right about that, where they said, hey, look for the unobvious simple thing. Nick, you want to make $1, sell a chicken. That's and just keep doing that. And that's where compliance usually comes in play. The compelling
Yeah.
is very romantic, but it doesn't necessarily stick if it's early adoption, for example.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Well, on top of that, one of the questions I love to ask Nick is
Hmm.
like we all go through challenges in business, and oftentimes we feel like we're the only ones that have dealt with that, or where something's wrong with us, or whatever the case may be, but we
Right.
haven't done. And so, one of the questions I like to ask, because I just find it's helpful, is what's the number one biggest challenge that you faced in your business, and what's the lesson that you learned from that?
Oh, great question. Great question. Once again, it still comes back to that great team. I've been a part of phenomenal teams, Jason, in my life,
Mm,
whether it was in the sports world, whether it was in the business world, or whether it's the family, you know. And the great teams do things greater than, the sum of the parts. That's basically that whole theory
mm,
there about the sum of the parts. So the big challenge is the S's, right? How do you get that succession plan of getting self-sufficiency, scalability, and sustainability? Those have been my 3 tenets with the S's. And in order to do that, you got to get on the business. You can't be in the business, as
mm,
the saying goes. So you really have to circle back to who are the right people, let them do their job. That's usually a challenge, especially if you're starting out as a solopreneur. You're like,
yeah.
okay, shut up, and learn how to become a servant leader. So
Mm,
putting best practices in place to smack your own hand, to have the self-discipline to let people do it, execute the vision that you laid out. Once again, make sure that it's shared, or if it's not shared, you still work with them, but you actually know what do they want out of it. What's their
yeah.
why. Everyone
Yeah.
doesn't take the whole journey the whole way with you, but if it's
Mm,
clear, you guys have mutual respect for each other. That's the biggest challenge, and also understanding, keeping a premise in mind that life's pretty simple. There's only about 20 problems in the world. Only thing that
Yeah.
makes them special, there's about five categories of those problems. Only thing that makes them special is they're yours, Jason, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Somewhere in Japan, there's someone speaking Japanese and they got the same problem, and somewhere else. And that's one thing I learned, seeing the world, and being the world
Mm,
trade expert for IBM with the PC. So you're going to all these places when you're young, and that really wakes you up on, okay, yeah, I'm special, but really, someone
yeah.
else's experience. You got to have a sense of humor about yourself.
Yeah.
Biggest thing I
Yeah.
learned.
Oh, I love that because it's something that I believe in as well. And, I always tell people it doesn't matter what you're going through right now. There's somebody that is has 10 times more problems, but 10 times more effective than you are and having all the same issues. So why can they do more than you? Well, they've just
Right.
learned how to deal with that. And I love what you've said because I never really thought about it, but it's true. It's like really things do kind of boil down to 20 maybe. I mean, maybe somewhere around there problems right
Five
around there.
categories.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, but it's we're all dealing with that sort of stuff, but it's how we
Right.
deal with it and learn from it that makes the biggest difference.
Right.
So I love that. What a
Right.
great perspective on that.
Yeah.
Well, looking
Yeah.
over the yeah, sorry, go on, Nick. Yeah.
Well, and what I made as a core tenet, because what I learned from being in the technology world is I would watch my beautiful wife, who was advertising marketing. She went to school for journalism, and then pretty much, you're trying to explain to people how technology impacts your business. Well, the
Mm,
only ones, as you know, for outside of military or some government, the government would say, I don't care what technology is doing in some cases, right?
yeah.
Unless it was, pretty complex or military or dark or things like that. But for the most part, you could run your business as, a person year, it lasts a year, but not in the technology world where it was down to 3 months before you had to learn something new, change your approach, change how you do business
Mm,
to incorporate the technology. Well, we're here now. So, with AI and all these other vertical areas
yeah.
outside of a government or commercial technology firm, you had to continuously learn. So, the biggest thing I learned early was best practices and create a flexible framework for all my businesses that went back to technology approach of finding framework and best practice of how do you handle change.
Mm,
So you're resilient and keep it simple,
yeah.
and apply that, as far as
Yeah.
be a
Yeah.
solution architect. You got your to be, you got your as is, and you got the gap to close, and just keep managing that
Yeah.
change.
I love it. I love it. It's such great advice, Nick. Well, over the next, let's say 2 to 3 years, what are your goals in the business? What are you looking to achieve?
Oh, great question. Great question. Well, I look at this stage, I call this, since I play sports, this fourth quarter. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
It's time to win everything, right? It's time to win the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as I'm having, the family's having grandkids for us, we got, and that plan has started. So it's all about that L word, the love word, absolutely, but legacy.
Mm,
So in this legacy stage, what I learned from, being in Baltimore, you get blessed by being around people that you create that circle of influence, right?
mm,
Some some you don't know, but some you're in that space. Well, I was in Baltimore, so one of them was Oprah, Oprah Winfrey. Oprah was in Baltimore, so Oprah would come to our school every
mm.
month. And it was so funny. The other students like, why is she here again? Because this is when Oprah was local, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, on Channel 13. But she would come talk to us. And she said one key thing that I always remembered back then in high school, and that was execute your stage. So if you do it well, don't worry about, how big it is. Just
Mm,
execute it. So the bottom line, Jason, so what I did, I created the same four things I worked with. Just what you said, technology,
Yeah.
sports, youth development, leadership development, right?
Mm.
Well, the bottom line and wellness. So as you go through life in this fourth quarter, I just kept executing the same thing, and now it's at a global and national global level. So go
Yeah.
ahead
Amazing.
and keep doing the same four things that 30 years ago people said, you're not focused enough. You need to
Mm.
zero in on this one thing. I said, no, no, no. These are the four things that make up who I am, and you do
Mm.
well. So just
Yeah.
keep doing them.
Amazing.
And if you stay healthy and it's working, your system, right?
Yeah.
Next thing you know, people start showing up around the world to say, hey, can we do this here? And can we
Mm.
apply that flexible framework to the way we do business and
Yeah.
what we want to do? So
Yeah.
that's the
That's
goal. And
brilliant.
this one is, of course, make more money, but
Yeah.
most importantly, in your legacy stage, change the world, one person
Yeah.
at a time.
Love it. Love it. Well, Nick, for people that are wanting to get in touch with you and find out a bit more about what you do, what's the best place for them to do that?
Well, like I said, number one, I still make myself accessible, although my admin says stop. Um, Nick at savageflight.com is a great way to get me. The website is savageflight.com. Um, I'm fine, saying my number as far as, and then she'll take care of
Yeah.
cuss me out later. 703-303-4457. But have a reason on why you call
Oh yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's
Mhm.
brilliant. Well, I recommend everyone getting in touch with Nick for sure. Find out what he does, and I know he can definitely help you. So, Nick, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a
Thank
great
you,
pleasure having
Jason.
you here, man. And as a reminder to everyone listening, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everyone hates. To find out more, send me a direct message on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborne. And the link to that will be in the show notes below. And until next episode, stay inspired.